Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the BizTech Challenge webinar covering an overview of the program and getting started. Now, this presentation will be given by Joel Dawson. So, Mr. Dawson has a lot of experience in coaching winning pitch teams, and so he's going to give you some insight into how to get started with the lean startup method, because starting the right way oftentimes leads to the very best results. So he's going to give you some hints on talking to customers, on how to uncover and really get to the root of your issue and finding a solution that works for it. He is a professional speaker. He's won a number of awards with that and does sales training and lean startup training as well. And I'll let you tell, Joel, I will let you introduce yourself a little bit more. Are you ready to, Joel, are you there?
I'm ready.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm going to now turn it over to Joel Dawson, and he is going to handle it from here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and he is going to pull up his PowerPoint. So here we go.
Okay, you guys are right on time. As Wendy said, my name is Joel Dawson. I'm a business consultant and pitch trainer here in Lafayette, but I do cover anywhere from Houston, Texas up to Memphis, Tennessee, which is normally my area. But I want to give you a little background on myself. I started pitch training more seriously about 3 years ago. And what happened was I had a gentleman I met. He asked me to come to this event with him. At that time, I was a professional speaker. And he said, I would like you to maybe help them with their presentation skills. And I was like, not a problem. So, I listened to him and I said, okay, this is something that I can definitely help you with. I said, however, when it comes to sales, I'm not really sure that's the best way to do it. So we talked about just sales in general, and I got hooked on it. But what happened was I got contacted by an investor group, an angel network who basically invests in startup companies. And they asked me to come sit in on some of their companies that they were interested in investing in, and they wanted my opinion of them. So what I really found out, and this was the real exciting part that really made me jump full circle into this, was I found out what they were actually looking for. Now, I have to say this. When it comes to pitching to it, we all think our idea is great, it's fantastic, we're going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we spend all of this money on PowerPoints, and we have all the theatrics in the pitch, right? Thinking that's going to win the investors over when it's not. Investors are very disciplined with their money. Back in the night, they've already lost their money. They know how they fell for that a long time ago. So the one thing that you have to understand is investors are more disciplined with their money than you will ever be with your idea. But I found out what they were looking for. I found out what it takes for them to pull the trigger. I will also say this. I heard this in the very beginning. I didn't believe it, but it's true. There are more investors with money sitting on the sidelines than there are companies that are actually ready for that investment. So just keep that in mind. Money is never an issue when it comes to a startup, but you have to be able to give them what they're looking for. So that's what we're going to go over today, right? So back in the 90s, I was at this sales conference. And it was back then, back in the 90s, I'm telling how old I am because I was still an adult then. They had this thing that was celebrated called Free Enterprise Day. Free Enterprise Day is a day for entrepreneurs, people that are starting a business, small business, whatever. And the gentleman, the keynote speaker, was well known in that industry, and he was an older guy, and he was saying, "This is America, the land of opportunity. All you need to start a business, you have to have a product or a product, service, or an idea in demand. Get out there and compete in the marketplace." So everybody just started, hey, I'm going to start a business. They was going to get their LLCs, corporation, buying all of this inventory, getting ready to conquer the world. So what happened was you had a bunch of people, instead of having people out there looking for a solution, instead of having them out there looking for a problem, They already created a solution. So they were a solution in search of a problem. And with that, five out of five businesses, three would fail within the first year. Had they taken some time to just done a little research, that could have been avoided. But that was the norm for a very long time for people, out of five businesses, knowing that three of them are going to fail. Okay. It was like jumping out of an airplane. Jumping out of an airplane is really not risky. It's what happens between you jumping out of the airplane, whether you're going to grab that ripcord on that parachute, whether that parachute is going to open, but before you hit the ground. That was the risky part. But they compared starting a business to that. That was until this guy came along. In 2011, his name is Eric Ries, and he had worked for a couple of different companies, and he wrote a book called The Lean Startup, and that comes from Japanese manufacturing. And instead of a top-down philosophy like we talked about, I'm going to start a business, let me get the LLC, tax license, and all this kind of stuff, the inventory, then try to go out and market it. They started from the bottom up. And the way it works in Japan with the way that they designed their products wasn't based on what engineers said. It was always based on, what the customer wants. If there was something that they can tweak in their product, not based off of what the engineer said, but based off the customer feedback, that's how they did it. So he wrote a book called The Lean Startup, and this is what the lean business model does for you. It's, first of all, it's based on testing. And we're going to talk a lot about that. This whole webinar is about testing. It increases the business success rate because you know beforehand if this is a good idea or not. And we're going to talk about ideas again. It's not your baby. This doesn't cost, it's going to cost you little or nothing, with the exception of putting boots on the ground, you and maybe a couple of your friends or people that you may be thinking about going into business with. But as I said before, you will know before you spend a lot of money if your idea is any good or not. Now, as a side note, I will tell you, as a pitch trainer, earlier this year, I had a startup that I helped from Baltimore that was able to secure funding for $2 million. Now, I don't know where you're from, but $2 million is a lot of money. But my secret sauce when it comes to that is not necessarily in the pitch itself. It's going to be in the questions that the judges or the investors would actually ask you. I'm going to cover a couple of questions in here that you guarantee if you're on this call and you pitch at the Bayou Classic, I promise you're going to get those questions. But the answer to those questions are going to be in the actual research that we do. So let's talk about your hypothesis or your idea. Keep this in mind. It's just an idea. That's all it is. If any of you guys ever watched Shark Tank, Robert Herjavec, one of the longtime investors of the show, he did with Darren Hardy on Success Magazine, and they were talking about that. And people would always tell him, this is my baby, and he would tell them, no, it's not your baby. He was talking about a business, but this is not your baby. Your babies are at home. This is a business. And I said that to say this, this is just an idea. It's not a business yet. I know you love it and you can't wait to start working on it, but it's just an idea. Remember, we have to test it to make sure that it's going to work. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is you want to write down your idea. Okay. You want to write down, let's really focus on the problem that you're going to be solving. And you want to be precise when it comes to this. I don't care if it takes a page. Write it down. Then we're going to focus on the solution, the way you think it's going to work. I will also say this. Anybody that has a startup right now, they will tell you that the way they wrote it down in the very beginning, the problem that they assumed it was going to be, the solution, how they assumed it's going to work, never works that way. It never, ever works that way. But you have to be open-minded. Okay? So once we have that written down, this is what's next. This is my favorite movie, Training Day. Denzel, for a guy like Denzel Washington, always playing the good guy, it's when he plays the bad guy that he gets the Oscar. Okay? If you're not familiar with this movie, Denzel Washington plays a crooked cop by the name of Alonzo Harris, and he plays that with Ethan Hawke, as you can see in the background, who plays Officer Hoyt. Officer Hoyt wants to rise through the ranks to become a detective really fast. The best way to do that is on Alonzo's team. But Alonzo's crooked, he doesn't know that. So they go through the movie, and at the end of the movie, there's a scene where Ethan Hawke is like, you know what, I'm turning you in. You just shot a guy and robbed him, and you saying I did it, but I didn't do it. Alonzo Harris, aka Denzel Washington, says, yes, you did. A room full of decorated officers said you pulled the trigger. He said, but I didn't do it. And then he says this line. He said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So when it comes to your hypothesis, it's not what you know, because I know that you know in your heart of hearts that this is going to make a lot of money and it's going to be big. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And to do that, it's all about the process. There's a famous gentleman that said, test, don't guess. You know who said that? I did. I made it up about 2 years ago. But it's so true. Test, don't guess. Remember, you have to stay disciplined to the process. It's all about the process. The first thing that we're going to test is your your problem. What you think the problem is. We have to understand exactly what that is. Now, you have an idea what it is in your mind, but we have to find out from the general public, the people that you're going to probably selling your goods to. We have to find out what they think about that problem. After that, then we're going to test the solution or the minimum viable product, but we'll cover that later. Okay, so the way that we're going to do that is through a process called customer discovery. Okay, and we're going to do that through client interview. So there's a pre-planning process that goes with that. So when it comes to your customer discovery, number one, you have to be focused. You don't want this to drag on forever. And what I mean by ever is like weeks and weeks and weeks. I was talking to Wendy earlier and the other day when we met about something called Startup Week, and it's a program that I really love where people take ideas and in 54 hours, they have a business, which means that they got the customer discovery and the interview process over extremely quickly. Okay, so if you're going to be selling to consumers, just ordinary individual consumers, you want a sample of about 100. And I know you may think, wow, Joel, that's a lot. Well, I mean, if you're going to be selling millions and millions and millions, is that really a lot? No, you can come up with 100. Okay, now remember, when you write down to understand the problem, who is that problem for? What are their age? What's the demographic? What's their financial background? You want this, and that's nothing but a roadmap. When you write your initial hypothesis down, that's nothing but a roadmap to get you pointed in the right direction. If it's B2B, business to business, if you're going to be selling your services to business, approximately 20. Okay. Be aggressive with this. Now, when I say be aggressive with this, I don't mean towards, that person that you're going to be interviewing. What I mean be aggressive is, just getting this done. Don't let this lag on. Okay. Now, let's talk about the client interview process, the actual interview. Now, for me, what works best is face to face, if at all possible, because if you're face to face, you get more of a feeling of what it is that that ends customer or that user is trying to what they're trying to say. This is not an opportunity for you to try to sell your idea on anybody. As a matter of fact, don't even bring it up because it's not time for that yet. We're not even talking about a solution. We have to understand the problem. We have to understand the problem from another person's perspective. That's the only thing that we're trying to do here. And it shouldn't be like in an interview, like not necessarily an interview, but an interrogation. This question, this question. You want to have a conversation with them, but you want it to be authentic. So there's nothing wrong with grabbing, a friend, a girlfriend, a mom, dad, or anybody, and say, hey, let's practice, let's role play, because you do want to sound authentic and you do want to sound, just like you know what you're doing. But you want to ask them open-ended questions that's going to get them to talk, not yes or no questions, because that's where you're going to get the real feedback. You're going to get the real feedback, when you ask them to, tell me a little bit more about that. Okay. Find out as much as you possibly can about the problem. Remember, that's the only thing that we're talking about at this point. okay, during the customer interview. The only thing that we want to do is make sure that we get a really good grasp on what they think about the problem. Not what you think, what they think. Now, let them do all the talking. You take notes. They talky, you righty. Okay? Listen for insights. There's a lot of companies right now that started off as something else, but they kept their ears open and they listened to other ideas. And maybe another idea just popped into their head and they write it down. So you have to listen. Don't just be so focused on the next question that I'm going to ask them. Really take the time to listen. And as I said before, this is not the time to talk about the product. We're only focused on the solution so we can understand. Now, let me explain to you what an early adopter is. If you pick 100 people, okay, and you talk to 100 people, some of those people are going to say, I think this is a great idea, Wendy. I really do. I'm really excited about this. Okay. Those are people that would be considered an early adopter. And you say, great, I'm really excited about it too. Before you leave, this is what you want to tell those people. Hey, do you mind if I come back and talk to you in a week or so, or 2 weeks, or whenever? Do you mind if I follow up with you or get back with you? If they're really excited about it, they're going to say, yeah, sure, of course. Great, because that's going to come in handy later on. Not everybody is going to be an early adopter, but it's just a game of numbers, okay? You are going to find some people that are really excited about, whatever it is that you're trying to do. But one of the, and I do want to warn you against this, when you're talking about the problem or whatever, I know it's in you, you want to talk about the solution. Don't word it to where you're just looking for testimonials. We're not looking for testimonials. We're looking for honest feedback as to whether this actually is a problem. That's the only thing we're looking for, if this is a problem. Okay, for the people that you specified in your original hypothesis. Okay, so once you go through that, we're going to analyze the data. If you went through 100 or you went through 20 businesses, so we have all of this data that we have to analyze. Now, this is something that I just started doing about a year and a half ago. And that's because people were just so in love with that idea. And, it's really hard to let that idea go if you've really fallen in love with it. So one of the things that I started advising is to have someone give you an unbiased opinion on the data that you've gathered. Someone with experience, not your mom who wants to see you succeed, or your dad or your girl or boyfriend or something like that. Maybe a mentor, a teacher or something, somebody that's going to give you who's going to shoot it to you straight. The very first thing, regardless of how you structure your questions and what your questions are, this is what you want to be able to determine at the end of the interview process during the customer discovery. Number one, is this really a problem in their eyes? If you interview 100 people and they don't feel that it's a problem, close shop and get another idea. Remember, don't fall in love with it. It's only an idea, because you can persist if you want to, but I'm telling you, you're setting yourself up for failure. You have to let the data speak for itself. But for this webinar, yes, we have determined that this is a problem. So here's other things that you want to be able to determine. How are they solving this problem currently? What are they doing? What's their process? What products are they using? What services are they using? Or are they using a combination of it? Okay. Now, in parentheses, you see I have competitive advantage. If you pitch to an investor, if you pitch at the Bayou Classic BizTech, I promise you, if you're on this call right now and you pitch, one of you, or if not multiple of you, will get a question where they will ask you, tell me about your competition, or who is your competition? It's not necessarily a secret, but I got to put this in here. Never, ever tell anybody that you do not have any competition. There's two types of competition. There's direct competition. For example, like Burger King and McDonald's, they are direct competitors, okay? And you also have something called indirect competition. That would be like McDonald's and Taco Bell, right? They don't both serve they don't both serve hamburgers, but they serve the same market. So keep that in mind. If you will get asked that question, tell me about your competition, okay? So be able to determine, is it direct competition or indirect? Never say you do not have any competition. But for some reason you don't have any competition based on the data, give it 18 months, you will, okay? Where are they finding the products or services to fix this problem? When it comes to your go-to-market strategy, what I hear all the time is, our go-to-market strategy is going to be Facebook ads. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to remember you're talking to investors. How are they looking for? Are people actually shopping on Facebook for your service? Or are they using some alternative means? You want to know what that alternative means is when it comes to your go-to-market strategy, because that's what your market base, that's what they're currently using. I'm not saying that Facebook ads is not going to work, but if your market segment is telling you that they're searching for this product or service via this avenue, then that's going to give you a roadmap to start, okay? Now, I talked about Shark Tank. I was an addict to Shark Tank. Mr. Wonderful, that's the bald-headed guy that sits in the middle. I don't know why they call him Mr. Wonderful, but he said something I don't, a lot of people don't like. I'm not that, fond of him either, but he said something that was pivotal, and I heard it about 2 years ago. He said, any business, if it wants to have a chance, a startup, you have to do either one or two things for that company or that client. He said, either save them time, money, or both. Okay, so you want to find out what are they actually paying for this, whatever that service is. Find out what they're paying, because remember, you're going to have a pricing model. Another word of advice: just because your price is cheaper, that does not mean that you're going to be able to capture a part of the market. Don't make it cheaper, but you do want to be in a ballpark, and you are going to want to know that is when you start the manufacturing process or scaling or whatever it is. How much time, how much time does it take to solve this problem? If whatever they're doing, it takes them, let's say, a half hour, but your widget or your solution is they can do it in a minute or 2 minutes, you're on to something. Okay, now we talked about being disciplined when it comes to looking at the data. We also talked about getting an unbiased opinion to help you make that decision as to whether you're going to move forward or not. But in startup, there's an 80-20 rule. Just as a rule of numbers, if you talk to 100 people, you may get 20 people that say, hey, man, I think this is a great idea. Now, keep in mind, this is just basic sales figures regardless of what you're selling. If 20 people, you get 20 leads, for example, out of those 20 leads, about 3 of them are going to buy. Is that a lot? Well, depending on what your pricing model is. But you're going to have data from 80. And remember, always ask the question, why? If you have 80 people and you ask the right questions, you can turn that 20 that are just dead giveaways, say they're your early adopters, and say, yeah, I think it's a great idea. Well, ask them, if you don't think it's a great idea, what can I do? Or why don't you think it's a fit? Get some kind of information from them, because we're getting ready to go back to the drawing board. And what we would like to do is turn that 20% of people that think it's just a great idea, let's turn that into 40. Let's turn that into 50. We want as many people as we possibly can that are really interested in whatever solution that you're going to be providing for them. Remember, it's about what they want, not the perception of what you had in the beginning. Because now we wrote this down on paper. Well, we found out that based on, this is what the problem is, based on our market segment. This is who I thought it was, yes, but this is what they're saying. Because of what they're saying, I may have to tweak my solution. But you must know what you're building and who you're going to be building it for. So what we do is we call that a pivot. You pivot to success. So now we got more accurate data. as far as the problem. We thought it was one way, but in reality, based on the people that we're going to be trying to sell this to, this is what they're saying. So out with the old, in with the new. We're going to redefine the customer assumption based on what they said, based on the data that they've given us. Okay, and you don't just push it in. And I'll give you an example about data and how powerful data is. I'll give you two examples. Last it was 2 years ago. I was called to be a mentor at an event in Shreveport. It's called the Louisiana Startup Prize, and it's basically the same. It's kind of like the BizTech Challenge for a weekend, but what it was is prep to the actual pitch competition. That pitch competition, the winner gets $80,000. Okay, I was one of the mentors. I was the pitch coach. So after we just walked in, and I met this young lady who was there, just in conversation. She was also a mentor, and I asked her, just about her and stuff like that. And she told me that she had just started she just started her startup. I was like, well, congratulations. Here's a funny story about that. She went to Mississippi State, and she was a business major, and she had to basically do the same thing. She had to, come up with this company or whatever, but she was serious for it. She was doing it for the grade. And part of her interview process, it was an app. It was a financial app. So the customer discovery process, she had a goal of 100. So she's pitching. She's pitching to professors, and it had some investors. The investors are everywhere. Those are the guys that kind of look like, nonchalant. They're not dressed up in suits. Those are the guys that, the golf just look like regular old Joes. Okay. But they had some investors in the audience. So one of the questions to her was, did you, when it comes to the customer discovery process, did you get, 100 downloads? And she said, no. She got over 2 million downloads. Those investors sat up, went to her after, and it was like, did you really get 2 million downloads? She said, yes. They said, can you prove it? She said, yes. They said, don't move a muscle. We'll convert them. She pitched and got $250,000. Her name is Sheena Allen. You can look her up if you want the name of her company. Now it's Capway. But that's the power of doing really, really good, really good in the customer discovery process. Okay. What we're looking for is the perfect market fit, which means that now that you have all of this other data, you get to tweak your solution to make sure that it's a fit. Remember, it's not about what you thought it was. You want to make sure that those people that told you that it was a good idea, you want to make sure that they could say, yep, this is it. This is exactly what I was thinking. Okay. I'll give you another story. This is on the other side. I had a client last year from Baton Rouge, but she's actually in the master's program at Vanderbilt. And so they had to basically do the same thing. And I was one of the people, because I travel, I was one of the people that fit, in her market segment. Her idea was to turn shopping, these abandoned strip malls that are on the outside of Baton Rouge, turn that into co-working space. And I actually thought it was a good idea because I do travel a lot. I have clients in Baton Rouge, New Orleans. I have them, Little Rock, Memphis, and I have them here in Lafayette. But in cities like New Orleans or Baton Rouge, I don't go downtown. I would rather meet, on the outskirts. I have them, come meet me if it's feasible, and most of the time it is. And she was saying that her problem was people were tired of the commute downtown. And I told her, I was like, well, me personally, of course, I can only speak for myself. I said, the commute is not a problem for me. What is a problem is if I did get a co-working or an office space downtown, if I had a client that had to come, say at 10 o'clock and there's bad traffic, or they can't find a place to park, they're going to be late. They're going to be in a bad mood. And the type of business that I have, I can't afford that. So yes, I do agree, but what a different reason. And then she says, well, I can't use you in my market segment. I said, of course you can. I'm giving you a different reason. But the thing was, she was so focused on making her problem and her solution fit, she didn't realize that here's somebody on the outside that's giving me, wow, this is another reason that, it should be more on the outskirts. So always let your data talk, and you want to look for a perfect fit. And what you want is, we're going to talk about the MVP next, but you want to make sure that when you start getting feedback, it's predictable. And what that means is, when you take your MVP to them, they're going to say, yep, 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 versus, nah, well, I think you need to change it. Or I think you need to change that. You'll be ahead of the game that way. Okay. The minimum viable product. Okay. A minimum viable product is a minimum set of features. Okay. It's got to be easy to use. Now, let's use apps for example. A lot of times people go ahead and fully develop an app, and they'll have the light or the free version, and then they have the paid version. The minimum viable product is before the free version. Is, as I said, it's a minimum set of features based on the feedback that you got from the interview process, from the customer discovery process. You're only looking for something that's going to solve that problem based on what they say. You can add all the bells and whistles later, okay? Now, the one thing that we're going to talk about later is, how do you validate that? You're going to have to make some changes. You got a minute. So you go back to the early adopters. These are the people that say, hey, man, I think it's a great idea. You go back to them, or you call them and say, hey, remember that idea I talked about when we talked about this problem or whatever? They say, yeah, you mind if I come by? I got something I want to show you. Okay, so you go back and you present your solution based on all of the feedback that you have, not based on your idea, based on the feedback. And here you go again. Make sure that it's easy for them to operate, and you take notes on what they say about that. Well, I think it should do this. I think it shouldn't do this, or whatever. Write that down. Through all of your early adopters. Now, hopefully, because we've done some tweaking and we've asked more questions, we can go to more than just that 20%. Remember, we talked about that. We talked about, asking that 80%, what else can I do? So hopefully it's gotten to maybe, 30, 40%, where they say, well, yeah, if you do this, yeah, I think it'll fit. I would be interested, in using whatever it is idea you have to solve this problem. Okay, so you want to go back to each and every one of them and just then again, you're not trying to sell it. You're not trying to sell it at all. You just want to get their feedback on what they think, or how they think your solution to that problem is going to fit. So that's why it's important to make sure that you keep track of your early adopters. Because remember, in the first interview that we did, we were only concerned about the problem, making sure that it was a problem and validating that it was a problem. The second interview, what we're doing now is we're testing the solution. So as you can see, it's a two-part process. It's not just about, I have to develop this and then try to sell it. Okay, so now you have data on the solution. Okay, so even if you didn't get it exactly right the first time, you have your customer segment that's basically telling you, okay, it should do this, or it should do that, or it shouldn't do this, or it shouldn't do that. Whatever that data shows, unanimously, you pivot again. You go back to the lab, go back to your computer, go back to, to wherever your little think tank is, and you correct those, and you keep pivoting until you have a product. And this is how once you have that done, it's satisfied. This is how you validate it. When somebody, now, even though they said it's a great idea, I love the idea. That's one thing. The way you validate all of the research that you've done is when you take that finished product, not your light, not the upgraded version. We're talking about that minimum viable product. And this can't be overlooked, because this is where the rubber meets the road. When you approach someone with your minimum viable product, all refined, and they are willing to take money out of their pocket and put it in your hands for the solution that you've created, then and only then have you validated your minimum viable product and all of the research that you've done. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about business model. I can't tell you how often people get so they just get so focused on it. The same company that I was telling you about earlier this year that pitched for $2 million, the very first time they sent me their pitch, now this was a company that was growing by leaps and bounds on the income statement. I looked at the business plan and I was like, man, this is phenomenal. I looked at the pitch deck and it was great. And then all of a sudden it hit me. And I see all of this money coming in. I see this money coming in. And I just had to ask him, dude, how do you make money? How it's like they forget. You can't forget that. That's the most important thing. So you have to describe how you're going to deliver and capture value for the end user. Okay. How you going to attract customers. Remember, we talked about that earlier before. Now that we have a viable solution that we have validated because people are willing to take money out of their pockets. By the way, it's okay to sell that, just to let you know. As a matter of fact, I advise you, if you created a solution for a problem, believe in it enough to go ahead and fix that problem for that customer segment. Go ahead and sell it. You have my permission, okay? But you want to sell more than them. One of the questions that we did ask, or I should say one of the areas that we did talk about in the customer interview process is we asked them, how are you looking to find the goods and services to fix this problem currently? Okay, I'm not saying you have to use that, but what I'm saying is you use that as a roadmap. Facebook ads are good, and Google ads and all that stuff is great. But remember, if these people are telling you this is where they look for it, you definitely want to consider that. I'm not saying be in the space. I'm not a marketing guy, and marketing is not part of this. But what I am saying is one of the questions that you will get asked again is what is your go-to market strategy? And I bring that up because I've always highlighted that as a red flag if people only put social media. Because as I said before, how many people shop on Facebook on a daily basis? I don't. I mean, you may buy something off of Facebook, but for a business, I know businesses don't shop on Facebook. As I said, as a consumer, you may buy or purchase something on Facebook, but do you go shopping there? Okay. So always keep that in mind. And as I said before, there's a lot of different pricing models, whether you are selling, your service per prescription, a subscription, I'm sorry, on a monthly basis, annual basis. You can sell it per item. However, make sure that you also, think about that as far as your business model, and make sure that you have that, in your pitch. We may have another session on pitch writing. I don't know if Wendy has that on the calendar or not, but I normally cover that later, exactly what to put in it and what not to put in it. Okay. So in summary, we got about 15 minutes for question and answer, but I do want to go over this. Okay. Remember, write down your idea. Make sure that it's clear. The problem, who the problem is for, their demographic, age, are they married, single, black, white, Catholic, whatever that is, write that down because you have to test that. Okay? Then you write down your idea. How do you think it's going to fix this problem? Customer discovery, conduct interviews, make sure you get that done quickly. Make sure you ask a lot of questions because remember, when you analyze the data, there's certain things that you want to be able to determine. Okay. Now, the good thing is, Wendy, I may have went kind of fast, but Wendy is recording this for a later playback. But remember, there's certain decisions that you have to make before you go to the next step. You also have the minimum viable product. Remember, that is not the free version. It's before you get to that. All the bells and whistles based on your customer discovery. You have a bare solution that fits everything your customer, your customer segment is actually looking for. And don't forget to make sure that you create some type of business model. So the people that's on the call, I want to wish you luck. I will be working with you at a later date to help you with this, but I'm really excited about it. This is our third year. I can't believe it's been 3 years already, but they just keep getting better and better, better. I'm amazed every year at the ideas and the potential for businesses. So I really look forward to working with you guys in the near future. So if any, that's it, Wendy. That's all I got right now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just give it back to you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've put a message out on the group chat for the students that if they have any questions, to please go ahead and ask those on the group chat, and we will answer those questions for you. So if you have any questions, do let us know. Let's see. Joelle, you
Wait,
go.
Wendy, I have one
Uh-huh.
question. Can I just answer it this way instead of typing it?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, I have a question about what do I think about the cosmetic market. Okay, I normally don't give my opinion because I don't want it to sway anything because well, first of all, I don't think I would, if this is a female, I don't think I would be in your target segment unless you're talking about, cosmetic surgery or something like that. But I will say this, I have seen and this was actually one last year at a high school. The couple, or I should say, the team that actually won the Drew Brees Trust Your Crazy Ideas. It was a team from Acadiana High. I was their mentor. I was their coach. It was a phenomenal idea. I had just never seen anybody followed up with it. I've had a couple people that had really good ideas when it came, and this was a cosmetic surgery. This was makeup for certain demographics, and I thought it was a great idea. I never got the result. So, you know, as far as my impression of it, I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to say because I don't want to sway you either or. I'm not in your target segment. But on the outside of that, I have seen some really good business ideas.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Any other questions? So,
How are
Joelle, go on.
Okay, I have another question from Julian Alvarez. He says, how are social media platforms monetized? Okay, so each platform is different. With the algorithms and things of that nature. As I said, I normally don't cover the actual marketing of it. However, if you're thinking about using that as a go-to-market strategy, I would I would find somebody on my team, put them on your team. Don't just, if when it comes to being an entrepreneur, don't think you have to do everything yourself. And please don't try to do everything yourself because the entrepreneur is you're the guy that has to be able to see the big picture. Besides, investors or judges do not want to see just one person. So whatever platform that you're thinking about using, make sure that you find somebody that specializes in that can help you. But also keep in mind, as I said before, what are your target segment, whatever solutions that they're currently using. Find out, where are they looking for that.
Right, and one thing about the team composition, that's one reason why we require the teams to have more than one. We want you to have between 3 and 5, because we want you to have different skill sets, different abilities, different backgrounds, and it makes for a better outcome when the team composition. So the social media platform, it does bring to mind the two-sided market problem. Joelle, do you want to speak about that a little bit, about those two-sided or sometimes even three-sided markets and how someone should approach that?
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Well, oftentimes there's users, but there's also the people who are the ones who would pay for something. So like Facebook, the users, they don't pay for something, but it's important to get the users on Facebook because they become what the people who actually pay the money want access to. So the customers of Facebook are the advertisers, but the users have to have something of value, so they'll come and use it. And so that kind of market, you've got to be able to get enough out there to get the users on. So then there's something of value to the people that are actually going to pay you money. That's how Facebook makes its money. That's how a lot of those programs make their money. The other aspect of the two-sided platform is oftentimes you need someone like platforms that are buying and selling. You need someone who's willing to buy, and you need someone who's willing to sell. And so if you don't have both of those there, then it's hard to get traction in those kinds of business models. You need to have both kinds of people in kind of equal numbers on the app. You know, the very obvious application of that is like a dating app. You need to have equal amounts of people that would want to actually meet the other kind of person. But that is an analogy that works with all sorts of kinds of marketplaces. You need to have both people that can create and sell and people that want to come and buy. And those two-sided marketplaces, they can be very challenging. So you need to be sure that you're asking the questions of all the interested parties for your business model, so you're really getting at the root of what it is that's their problem, or what it is that is something that they would be attracted to, in order to make sure you've got the right kind of offering to get them to engage with those kinds of marketplaces. So any other questions? What else do we have? We have a few more minutes to wrap this up.
There's got to be more questions out there.
I know there
If not, I can always sing like Frank Sinatra. I don't sound like Frank Sinatra, though.
I'm sure you have a fabulous singing voice, though, Joel. You have a fabulous speaking voice. So,
well, I tell you, but when the flattery will get you anything, just let me know how much to write the check out to.
Well, so I know that some of our, I know one of our teams is going to be using university intellectual property. So they've decided to go to their university department that handles the patents that the university owns, and they're going to try to find a way to get a business model available for them. So they're a very good example of really needing to do the research and being able to find out how you craft your business model, because there already is a solution. There's already a product, but they've got to find the business model that goes around that. So can you speak a little bit about the kinds of questions about trying to get to the core of your business model when you have kind of a solution already and you think you know the answer? You know, different aspects of approaching that.
Okay, so to make sure that I hear your question correctly, you saying if someone has a solution already?
Right, because university IP tends to be that way. It tends to have a solution kind of built in, but it doesn't really have a business model yet. So they really need to find their business model.
Right. It depends on what it is. You know, IP is kind of funny because it's a secret. You know, everything is a secret with IP. But you know, there's very few choices when it comes to, you know, actually, you know, getting money. Either you selling it, you know, you give me $1 for this widget or whatever, or you're going to pay for the service, or you paying a subscription to use the service plus continual service or what have you. I do know this, that when it comes to judging and when it comes to, you know, just investors, they don't really get that deep into it on the surface when you're on stage. That's more or less like a offline type of discussion, or if you are pitching to investors, they may ask you that. But for competitions, they normally don't go that deep because they don't have the time to. But if you have a good idea how you can make money and it makes sense, then you should be good to go.
Right, and it's about getting some evidence of the business model, right?
Right. And now, when I say business model, I mean profitable business model. Whatever it is that you're using or utilizing to solve a problem, you know, when it comes in, that was just one particular company I'm thinking about last year that actually ran into that. Not necessarily ran into it, but you know, when I looked at the numbers, it really didn't make sense unless she would have to sell in bulk. But just in starting out, her cost, her manufacturer's cost was kind of high, and that's because she's just starting out. Granted, you know, she sell 2-3 million of them. You know, you can actually drop the cost down. So whatever business model that you use, and this has everything to do with the price point, you know, you have to be able to turn a profit at the end of the day, taking everything into account, not just the manufacturing of it. Because you also have, you know, somebody had said, you know, something, one of the earlier questions was talking about, you know, social media. So, all of that has to be taken in consideration. So at the end of the day, that business model has to be profitable.
Mhm. Well, that is an excellent segue to next week's to next week's webinars. We have one last question. What are red flags that indicate that a business will have a low success rate, and what can be done to increase the success rate?
It's in the customer discovery process. If you really pay if you I think everybody in their house somewhere has a roll of duct tape, right? Duct tape was one of those things that came about accidentally. It did. Don't if you just pick a segment and start asking questions. Don't and not be so focused on your idea. Just be focused on that segment. What are they saying? And then you just create. You just feel that need. That's what when you have. I'm gonna use her again. Go back to Shark Tank. Lori. What's Lori's last name? I don't know. The blonde lady on there. She has over 400 patents, and she's the only thing that she does is when she finds a problem, a legitimate problem, she just creates something. So it's never about something that she already has. It's about the problem that she sees in front of her. It's a problem that she sees in front of her that she will create a solution for. If you approach entrepreneurship that way, then that will definitely increase your success rate. I am a perfect example because I didn't start out being a pitch trainer. I saw the demand for it. I was a professional speaker. I just released a book and I was okay with that. But I had the wherewithal to stay open minded. So when this demand repeatedly kept coming to me, I said, well, there's a void there. And as of right now, you still don't have, I don't know of any in this area full time, you know, people that, train companies to pitch to investors. That's a void that I found. So I've had a really good success rate with that. Not because I had the information that I wanted to present. The information that I present to you is not something that I got off Google. The information that I present to you is information that I got from investors and what it takes for them to pull that trigger.
That's
That's where
very
I get
good
this
advice.
information from. So it's not mine, it's theirs. I'm just relaying it to you because what I saw was a gap. I
Mhm.
knew what the investors were looking for, and I knew what the startup companies were pitching, and there was this gap because the startup companies were presenting what they wanted to present, not what the investors wanted. So as you can
Mhm.
see, there was that need there. So I started training the companies how to pitch to investors, giving them what it is that they want. So to answer that question, if your numbers are low in your customer discovery process, continue through it. But have the wherewithal to say, even if your product doesn't matter, even if your product, if you see that your product is not a fit, what can you do with all of this data that you have? Think about that.
Mhm.
And that's why you don't get locked into just one idea. Oh, people have ideas all the time. I'm willing to bet you, if you just think about it and start writing them down, you'll come up with ideas daily. And sooner or later, you'll find a fit.
Mhm. Right, right. That's great advice. And Julian, one other thing that Joel and I have spoken about is if the responses to your questions that you're asking, if you're getting kind of lukewarm response, that's one. It suggests that maybe there's another problem out there. And sometimes people will be getting lukewarm response, but then they say, "But this other problem is a really big deal."
Yes.
If you've heard that a number of times, suddenly you're like, whoa, I'm getting lukewarm responses to the thing that I thought was the problem, but everyone's telling me this other thing is really the problem. That can be a sign of a area to go to.
Right. And here's the funny thing. I'm gonna tell you this one. And this is a company that was in Baton Rouge. This was maybe a year and a half ago. I did an event and I met with the company after, and I listened to her pitch. She had already pitched to some investors and she was turned down. And I found out why. She was saying that her problem. Well, first of all, she didn't do the client discovery process because that would have fixed it. What she said was she based her data or her problem around the end user. It was B2B to a company. And she was saying that this was a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. And when I looked at it, it's like, well, that's not a problem for them. They don't care about that. It's a problem for these people. So she
Mm-hmm.
was like, you know what? You're right. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so all of a sudden, because if she would have done the customer discovery process, now, even though that company probably could have benefited from it, maybe, but remember, there's two things that you can do for a surefire deal. Number one, if you can save them money, time, or both. She couldn't save them money, and she wasn't saving them any time. So it's like, yeah, I like it. I think it's a good idea. It wasn't a problem for them, but to this other dynamic, it was a big problem for her. So she tried to take, the problem for these people and match it to these people. Just listen to your data. Just listen.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. That's the product market fit. It's being very
Right.
specific about who your customer is. A lot of people make the mistake of saying it's for everybody, but it's not. It
Please don't say
never, it is not for everybody.
it.
Be specific. And if that's scary to narrow yourself down, go talk to those people, go ask the questions, and you're going to find out, okay, was my narrowing down to this particular group of people, this particular demographic or market segment, is that correct? And
Right.
that'll give you the confidence that you need. But nothing is for everyone. I promise
Right.
you, nothing. There is very few things that I could name that actually are truly for everybody.
Duct tape.
I think that, yes, you're right. Everyone loves to play with duct tape. You're right. You're right. Okay. All right. All right. Well, we are nearing the end of our hours. So let me just wrap up a little bit. I've got a few things to just close up with. Regarding the applications on Startup Compete, this is our first year using this platform. And what I have learned is that we really want everyone's demographic information. So please, each one of you should complete the profile part of this, but only one team member needs to submit the final presentation in the Startup Compete the Startup Compete account. So I apologize for any confusion that's caused. We do have, I've got my intern who's been sending out emails to you guys to ask you guys to finish completing the different profile information. And that's because we want to know who you are, what it's like for you in terms of entrepreneurship. It's part of the results that we get. This is grant funded, and all of our grant funded, all of our grantors really want to understand who we're serving and some data demographics. And so we take that data and we take out all the identifiable information, but it's part of what we report back that allows us to get the grant. And therefore, it allows us to get additional grant money for next year, because I'm sure some of you that participate this year are going to want to continue on with this. So please do complete the profile information. It's that first section of the registration. It talks about your school and your school attitudes toward entrepreneurship, the support you may have in your family, et cetera. That's all very important to us, and we very much appreciate that. And then finally, segueing a little bit to next week, we do have 2 webinars scheduled for next week. One will be Entrepreneur Resources. That'll be on Tuesday at 4, and I will be handling that one. And then we have Jim Edmondson, who is a counselor with a business counseling group called SCORE. He's going to be giving a presentation called Understanding Business Financials. And Joelle did speak about that a little bit, about
What's that?
understanding are you going to be able to make money? You talked about the money aspect.
Yeah.
That was a wonderful segue to this particular section. He's going to give an overview of business financials, and that's going to give you a sense of the business financials.
Okay.
We do ask as part of your final pitch presentation that you have a sense of your financials. A lot of it's going to be guesses and unknowns, but if you can at least give a try to come up with some estimates of revenues and costs, it's a good exercise. And so that is something that we do encourage you to include in your final pitch. And so he's going to give a seminar on understanding business financials. We do have Joelle slated for later in the month to talk about the pitch. So stay tuned for that schedule. So he did allude to that as well in the presentation. So you'll be able to dial in again and hear him talk about crafting your final pitch, which I know all of you are very interested in. All right. Well, I think that our time is now up. Joelle, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I am thrilled that all of you have joined us for this webinar. And I look forward to talking with you guys again next week. All right. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.